So the primary cost factors for rising homeowners insurance costs, it's primarily the demographic shifts of people moving into more climate riskier areas and building more expensive homes. 40-year record inflation is the next biggest component. And then the building material inflation has outpaced the underlying inflation. And then you add into that climate change and legal system abuse and regulatory costs. And that's why the natural disaster costs in homeowners insurance are going up. The best way to offset that is through more mitigation.
Risk is the only one a homeowner has any control over. And so disaster mitigation has to be part of the solution to drive down insurance costs. But not just any disaster mitigation, our risk reduction needs to be grounded in science and verified.
All right, Patriots, welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you're here because today we're talking about something that hits close to home, literally. Homeowners insurance is skyrocketing, and it's becoming a major issue across the country. We've got the left-wing government policies, climate change hysteria, and a whole bunch of other nonsense driving up the cost. But the big question is, who should pay for all this? The government? Homeowners? Or should we just keep letting these costs spiral out of control? I just watched this video featuring Senator John Kennedy grilling a bunch of witnesses about these rising premiums. And let me tell you, this is a prime example of the disconnect between the elites and the real hardworking Americans. The video touches on the root causes of rising insurance premiums and some potential solutions. But let me give you a breakdown from a right-wing perspective, and why I think we need to get back to basic principles like personal responsibility, freedom, and limited government. Now, before I get into the details of the video, let me just say this. I'm a patriot. I love this country and I believe in the values that have made America great. Freedom, self-reliance, and the idea that hard work and personal responsibility should be rewarded. And that's where I'm going to start my response to this whole, who should pay, question. So let's watch the video before I give you my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize to each of you for missing your opening statements, but I was in another committee. I have 5 minutes, and I would like each of you to give me 30 seconds on why you think premiums have risen, and another 30 seconds each on what you think we should do about it. Mr. Gordon?
So the primary cost factors for rising homeowners insurance costs, it's primarily the demographic shifts of people moving into more climate riskier areas and building more expensive homes. 40-year record inflation is the next biggest component. And then the building material inflation has outpaced the underlying inflation. And then you add into that climate change and legal system abuse and regulatory costs. And that's why the natural disaster costs in homeowners insurance are going up. The best way to offset that is through more mitigation.
I'm sorry, it's through what?
More mitigation and resiliency, improved building codes, wildfire prepared standards, fortified building standards. When you look at, if you analyze Hurricane Ian, which was the second worst insured loss event in history, if that had hit Florida before all of Florida's building code reforms, it would have been closer to a Hurricane Katrina loss event. And so you see entire neighborhoods in Florida.
Excuse me for interrupting, but I want to make sure everybody has a chance. Mr. Epstein?
Sure. So, yeah, the basic failures that are causing premiums to rise. So the government has failed at climate resilience, which is the most important thing. So in the case where it's the government-controlled things like the forests in California, they've just totally failed to manage those properly. Sometimes they inhibit people from managing their own property. So that's part one, is failing at resilience. Part two is actively encouraging people to take on risk that they wouldn't take in a free market, which happens, encouraging like all these disaster relief things just end up subsidizing people taking more risk, and they create these cascading problems. So the solutions are simple. We want to get rid of all the green policies that inhibit resilience, and we want a totally free market in insurance so that people aren't encouraged to take on undue risk.
Thank you. Madam Supervisor?
So the changing climate has led to catastrophic disasters in my county and across California, as you know. What can be done is a continued investment in infrastructure, hardening homes and community, forest health, and fuel management programs.
Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Senator. I agree with Mr. Gordon on all of his reasons why property insurance price is increasing. Of those, risk is the only one a homeowner has any control over. And so disaster mitigation has to be part of the solution to drive down insurance costs. But not just any disaster mitigation, our risk reduction needs to be grounded in science and verified. It's those two features that provide the bridge from the actions of a homeowner to the insurance industries. What I can tell you is that when you do that, insurers will pay attention.
All right, let's go in.
Oh, that is awesome.
Let's go in reverse order. I think each of you mentioned mitigation. When I hear mitigation, I also hear money. Who do you think should pay for the mitigation, and how should we pay for it? Mr. Newman?
Senator, we all have an obligation to pay for mitigation. That falls on individuals, on homeowners and families. That falls on every level of government, and the private sector needs to pitch in as well.
Madam Supervisor?
I agree. This is all of our responsibility at the local level, all the way up to the federal level, because we know who has to come in and clean up after a catastrophic.
So you think local should contribute?
I think everyone has a part to play.
You think local should contribute?
I think, yes,
Okay.
there is a part to play locally.
Mr. Epstein?
I mean, in general, as much as possible, the people taking on the risk, so as individual as possible. And, you know, if the government does something very specifically disastrous, then maybe it owes damages, but yeah, you want risk to be as individual as possible.
Mr. Gordon?
So the single most cost-effective wildfire safety standard is just simply moving the dry brush and plants 5 feet away from your home to create a defensible perimeter. California actually required that in law, but never implemented that in regulation. So there are very cost-effective things that you can do, homeowners can do, communities can do, if we guide them in the right direction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On behalf of the chairman, Senator.
The experts in the video talked about various reasons why premiums are rising, and they're not wrong. We've got people moving into more climate-risky areas, building bigger homes, inflation hitting every corner of the economy, and yes, you can throw in the ridiculous regulatory costs and legal abuse on top of that. But here's the thing, none of this justifies what's going on. In fact, this whole situation is a perfect storm of left-wing policies that have ruined the free market. Take Mr. Gordon, for example. He talks about inflation and building material costs driving up insurance premiums. No argument here, inflation is out of control and building costs are through the roof. But here's the question, who's responsible for that? You can thank big government spending, leftist economic policies, and their endless printing of money. What happened to fiscal responsibility? What happened to controlling inflation? We didn't get into this mess by following common sense policies, that's for sure. Then we have the climate change panic. Of course, they bring up climate change as the boogeyman behind these rising premiums. Now, don't get me wrong, I believe we need to be good stewards of the environment. But let's be honest, the left has turned climate change into an excuse for more government control, more regulations, and more taxes. They want to make us all feel guilty for living our lives, for having homes, for succeeding. Meanwhile, they push policies that make everything more expensive and less efficient. Mr. Epstein hit the nail on the head when he said the government has failed on resilience. That's exactly right. Look, we've got government-managed forests in California that are in complete disarray, and the government is actively preventing people from taking care of their own property. This is the same government that tells you how to manage your land, while simultaneously letting it burn to the ground in wildfires. As patriots, we believe in personal responsibility, in the right to control our own property and resources. The government should be empowering individuals to protect their homes, not making it harder. That's the free market at work. If people want to invest in wildfire-resistant building materials or better safety measures, they should have the freedom to do so without being penalized by overbearing regulations. Mr. Newman talks about mitigation as part of the solution, and I couldn't agree more. But here's the kicker. He's talking about science-backed, effective mitigation. That's where we need to focus. You see, the left's idea of mitigation is throwing more money at government programs, subsidies, and green energy boondoggles that don't actually do anything. Real mitigation means making our homes and communities resilient, without all the red tape and regulations. And let me say this clearly, mitigation should not be a burden on taxpayers. We all have a role to play, yes, but it's the homeowner's responsibility to take the necessary steps to protect their property, not the government's. If you're in a high-risk area, It's up to you to make your home more resilient. If you're worried about wildfires, clear the brush. If you're in a flood zone, elevate your property. And if you're building in a hurricane-prone area, you better be fortifying that home to withstand the storm. Mr. Gordon brings up some common-sense solutions, like clearing dry brush 5 feet away from your home to prevent wildfires. This is the kind of simple, cost-effective mitigation that we can all get behind. Why isn't this being enforced more broadly? Well, let me tell you why. It's because the left doesn't want solutions that empower individuals. They want more government control, more spending, and more dependency. In California, they've got these ridiculous regulations, but they fail to enforce basic safety standards. You've got millions of acres of forest that could be cleared to reduce the risk of wildfires, but environmentalists block any reasonable attempt at prevention. It's insane. This is what happens when the government gets too involved in every aspect of our lives. They create the problem, then tell us that they're the only ones who can fix it. Let's get real, folks. The government should not be the one footing the bill for disaster mitigation. It's not their responsibility to bail out homeowners who have made bad decisions. We need to get back to the basics of personal responsibility, and the free market should play a bigger role in insurance. As conservatives and patriots, we understand that life isn't risk-free. Insurance premiums are going up because risk is increasing, and the government's interference in the market only makes it worse. The solution isn't more handouts or bigger government programs. It's about empowering individuals, promoting self-reliance, and getting government out of the way. We need to start taking ownership of our own lives again, and that starts with the way we manage our homes, our insurance, and our risk. Patriots, it's time to stop relying on the government to fix everything. We need to take charge of our own futures, be smart about mitigation, and demand policies that make sense for hardworking Americans, not the bureaucrats in Washington. That's how we solve this crisis, by getting back to what made this country great. Thanks for watching. If you agree with me, hit that like button, subscribe for more videos, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. God bless America.